Thanks. Minute past the hour. There could be more protests today against a controversial test in New Mexico schools. Students at Atrisco Heritage Academy High School, South Valley Academy, and Rio Grande High School staged this protest of the PARCC exam yesterday. Other students from all over Albuquerque, Rio Rancho, even Las Cruces walked out too. The PARCC test is the new standardized test for 3rd through 11th graders that will be used to evaluate students and their teachers.
What's happening now is that teachers are afraid that their evaluation is going to be so low that they need to start teaching directly to the test. And what that's going to do is that's going to lead kids to stop wanting to come to school because of a dull curriculum.
News 13 spoke directly with the state's education secretary about the students' concerns. Hannah Scandera says when testing is over, she'll meet with those students, but she's calling the first day of the PARCC exam a success, estimating 48,000 students did take the exam. APS says more than 1,700 elementary, middle, and high school students have opted out. We're going to have more on this in our next half hour.
Still no word this morning on if Bernalillo County's DA will be kicked off the James Boyd murder case where 2 APD officers were charged. This after yesterday's planned hearing was delayed. DA Carrie Brandenburg charged APD officers Keith Sandy and Dominic Perez with the murder of the homeless man last year. Their attorneys are asking that she be removed from the case, citing a conflict of interest. The judge set another hearing next week after prosecutors were concerned after one officer changed his attorney, and the judge wants to make sure there are no issues with that.
A fight breaks out among a group of people gathered to watch a UFC fight. Police say members of a family had been drinking all night on Saturday at a home near Coors and Glen Rio when that fight began. According to a criminal complaint, family members started insulting Manuel Aragon. Aragon allegedly got mad and bit off a man's fingertip and then threw rocks in his eyes. He is now charged with aggravated battery. An Albuquerque soccer coach involved in a deadly crash is pleading not guilty, and the victim's family is not happy with what happened in court.
It's shocking, but I mean, I hope that justice is served with what he did to my brother.
Police say Corey Lucero, an assistant coach at Albuquerque Academy, was drunk when he hit and killed Jose Ruiz on Highway 528 in the Coors bypass in September and then left him to die. He was arrested a short time later. Lucero has already bonded out. The victim's family wanted him to have to install an interlock on his car until his trial, but the judge said no.
A lawmaker wants to keep deadly drunk drivers behind bars longer, and a hearing on a bill that could make that happen is expected today. Right now, the maximum sentence for vehicular homicide in New Mexico is 6 years, but those convicted of it are eligible for what's known as good time. For every month spent in prison, an inmate can earn a month off their sentence. In 2006, Jacob Williams hit and killed a motorcyclist while drunk behind the wheel, paralyzing a passenger. Despite a 6-year sentence, he only spent a little more than 3 in prison. Last year, he was drunk again when he slammed into another motorcyclist, killing Daniel Sanchez and badly injuring his daughter, Megan.
If they're serving 6 years and only getting off in 3, that's just not right.
Now, a bill working its way through the legislature would seriously cut down on the amount of good time deadly drunk drivers could earn. It's scheduled for a committee hearing later today. New Mexico could soon see more competition when it comes to the film industry. Arizona lawmakers are entertaining a bill with film incentives like New Mexico's to take back business they say should be theirs. News 13's Catherine Mazzone is in the Newsplex with the details. Good morning, Catherine.
Good morning, Crystal. Production companies in Arizona say they're tired of seeing movies that are supposed to be set in Arizona being shot in other states, including New Mexico.
Usually come in here for a few days, take some background shots, Cactus, Grand Canyon, and then they shoot films in other states.
That's John Stewart with the Arizona Film and Media Coalition. He cites several examples of movies that could have been shot in Arizona but moved to New Mexico instead. Movies like The Lone Ranger with Johnny Depp and Spare Parts starring George Lopez and Jamie Lee Curtis. Stewart says he watched Spare Parts crews shoot in Arizona for only a couple of days before heading to New Mexico to shoot the rest. The bill in Arizona's legislature would give tax breaks to productions spending $250,000 or more a year with a $30 million cap annually. Now, right now, New Mexico has a $50 million cap annually. Back to you, Crystal.
All right, thanks for that information, Catherine. Now, coming up in our next half hour, we'll tell you what film incentives have done for us here in New Mexico.
The New Mexico Senate has approved the expansion of what's called the Ban the Box law, which keeps government agencies from asking whether someone is a convicted felon on a job application. That bill would mean that private employers are now banned from asking the same question on applications too. However, employers are still able to ask the question verbally and do criminal background checks. Opponents say businesses should be able to weed out any applicants that they don't want to hire that way. We're staying on top of another bill allowing alcohol to be delivered to your door with food purchases. It cleared another hurdle at our state capitol. The Senate approved that bill in a 32-10 vote yesterday. Under the proposal, it would allow restaurants and companies to deliver up to 2 6-packs of beer and 2 bottles of wine with a meal purchase of at least $20. Deliveries can only be made to a residential address or a hotel. Under the bill, local governments could hold elections for voters to decide if they will allow local business to deliver beer and wine.
If you aren't paying child support, you could miss out on hunting and fishing this year. State officials are reminding all non-custodial parents that their hunting and fishing licenses will be revoked if they are more than 30 days overdue in child support. About 16,000 parents are affected each year. Since the program began, it's helped bring in $27 million in overdue payments.
We'll see you then. Thanks, Kristen. We're working right now to gather more information about some police activity in southeast Albuquerque overnight. So far, officers aren't saying much, but investigators were out at the apartment complex on Ross and Valencia about 1:30 this morning. Crime scene units were also there. We'll continue to follow the latest and bring you updates as soon as that information becomes available this morning. Meantime, more protests over the park tests are expected today. This comes after hundreds of students walked out over the mandatory exam all over the state.
Yesterday, some of those students took their concerns to the state's education secretary, Hannah Scandera.
The test is taking away students' opportunities to learn in their optimal state, and it's taking away teachers' opportunities to teach how they teach best.
APS Superintendent Brad Winter told News 13 he expected some pushback over this test, but hoped more students would take concerns to the legislature instead of the sidewalks. But students say they had no choice. Scandera says she plans to meet with students, but says for the moment it's important to focus on the test. Meanwhile, thousands of students from Albuquerque to Las Cruces also walked out on the park. APS said last week that any student who walks out on the test gets an unexcused absence and a 0. A student in Santa Fe who says she was suspended for protesting against the park test is making national news. 12-year-old Adelina Silva, an 8th grader at Capshaw Middle School, was featured on Fox News yesterday. She says she printed opt-out forms from the district's website and was handing them out to students on Friday when staff took them away.
I was sent to the principal's office for an hour and 20 minutes doing nothing, and then at the end of the day she ended up suspending me.
Now, she claims she was suspended for a day. The Santa Fe School District told Fox News no students have gotten into trouble for promoting their right to opt out.
We're breaking down the details of the park test and the protests against it online right now, KRQE.com. There, you can find facts about the test and opting out, a map of where students are protesting, and News 13's past stories on that controversy. Meantime, construction on a controversial project in the Bosque will continue. Last month, the Albuquerque City Council voted along party lines to stop work on a new trail from the Central Avenue Bridge to I-40. Opponents say the trail will ruin the Bosque, but the mayor vetoed that bill. Crews have kept working. Yesterday, Democrats tried to override his veto, but they didn't have the votes.
The state of Arizona is eyeing one of New Mexico's growing industries, film. Arizona is saying enough is enough when it comes to movies that are set in Arizona but filmed in New Mexico. Lawmakers there want to compete with our state's incentive programs to get business back. So what could they achieve by doing that? News 13's Catherine Rosone took a look at how well our incentives are working. Good morning, Catherine.
Good morning, Crystal. Now, New Mexico Film Office officials say incentives have made all the difference when it comes to attracting productions to our state. Even before the legislature tweaked tax breaks a couple years ago, they say we already had 2 television series here.
We now have 6 and potentially more with some pilots that are shooting here. So I think when it comes to attracting film and television, I think incentives are important if that's the business you want to be in.
According to New Mexico State Film Office, the state offers a 25 or 30% refundable production tax credit with a $50 million a year cap. Arizona wants to offer similar incentives to productions that shoot there, offering a tax break to those spending $250,000 or more a year with a $30 million cap annually. Production companies in Arizona say they hope those incentives will help to boost their film industry, since many movies like The Lone Ranger and Spare Parts are shot partially there but moved to other states. They say it would also mean bringing jobs back to Arizona.
Well, I'm hoping that we can get a lot more people in this studio working hard, because I know there's a lot of creative people in this state.
But officials with New Mexico State Film Office say it's not just our incentives that lure production to the land of enchantment. They say our sound stages, studios, and crew base are also a draw. Plus, we can double for a variety of locations, from Cleveland to the Middle East. Back to you, Crystal.
Sounds like good news for us. Thanks so much, Catherine. Now, one film, Lone Survivor, saved $4.5 million of its $40 million budget by shooting right here in New Mexico. That's according to the Los Angeles Daily News. A proposal that would ban the slaughter of horses in the state is tabled. The measure would have made it illegal to kill horses for meat that's meant to be eaten by people. The bill's sponsor, State Democrat Gil Chasey, argued that there are other ways to address the overpopulation of horses in New Mexico. She suggested expanding shelters and putting limits on breeding. Opponents of the bill say it's cruel to leave horses to starve, and that banning horse slaughter would lead to problems for state livestock officials. This comes almost a year after Valley Meat, a slaughter plant that wanted to process horse meat, decided not to go through with its plans.
5:36, the body of a missing Deming man has been found near the U.S.-Mexico border. U.S. Forest Service workers working near Cloverdale in Hidalgo County found 72-year-old Frank James Kalari's body near his vehicle. Kalari left his home Saturday morning, and his wife reported him missing later that day. Deputies say there are indications of foul play. The Office of the Medical Investigator will determine a final cause of death. Oh, this is like something out of a movie. Millions of dollars in gold and silver stolen in a highway robbery. Police say an armored truck broke down on I-95 in North Carolina on its way to Massachusetts. Inside, $4 million worth of gold and silver. Two armed guards say three armed men drove up, forced them into the woods, tied them up, and then took off with the precious metal. The truck driver, William Reeves, says he would never pull over on the side of I-95 unless it was necessary, and he believes that the truck was targeted.
A mother in New York convicted of poisoning her own son with salt could now face life in prison. 27-year-old Lacey Spears was found guilty of second-degree murder in the death of her 5-year-old son. Prosecutors say Spears killed Garnett Paul Spears by force-feeding him heavy concentrations of sodium through a stomach tube. Lacey Spears blogged for years about her son's illness. Her defense team says they will appeal that conviction. Now it's 5:30.